Hello and welcome to everyone who is joining us. Thank you so much for being here. We'll get started in just a few minutes. While we're waiting for everyone to join us in the chat, feel free to introduce yourself and let us know where you're calling in from. And maybe if you know what your human design is, you can share that as well. But don't worry if you don't know, because we'll have a way for you to figure that out. But if you want to share and introduce yourself in the chat, just make sure the chat is set to everyone, not just hosts and panelists. Let us know where you're calling in from and what your human design type is if you know it. But don't worry if you don't, because you'll be able to figure it out during this session. So we'll get started in just a few minutes. I won't take too long because we have a lot of really great information to go over today. I'm particularly really excited about this. I recently found out what my human design type was, which is a projector. But I'm really excited to diving in a little bit more and learning about it because I'm a bit new to the human design world. Totally, really excited. Hey, Sarah, calling in from Utah, Amber from New York, Natalie from London, who is a generator. And we've got some people calling in from Spain, another projector. Awesome. So to everyone who's just joining us, as I was saying, you can introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're calling in from, and if you know your human design type already, you can share that as well. But we will have time to learn what your human design type is later. So don't worry if you don't know, but go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone in the chat. And we're going to get started in just a few minutes. Oh, hi, Janet. Nice to see you here. Currently in Madeira. Oh, how nice. Clara in San Francisco, a manifesting generator. Hi, everyone. So nice to see some familiar names here. And we will get started in just a few minutes. For those of you who do not know me yet, I am Lindsay. I'm head of community and events for Outsite. Outsite is a global network of co-living and co-working spaces for remote workers, digital nomads, creatives, entrepreneurs, people who are interested in the lifestyle. We offer co-living spaces, community, and events just like this one. And I recently just got back from about a month in Portugal, staying at the different outsites. They were really amazing. The thing I love most about the outsites is the community. There's always someone to, go out to dinner with or to hang out with. It's nice to be around other digital nomads and remote workers. So that is the reason that I love Outsite, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have about Outsite. But today we're going to talk about how to make decisions and take action based on your human design type. And I'm here with one of our members, Jess, who is an expert at human design, and she's going to guide us through this presentation about human design, and we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. So the chat box is open, as well as the Q&A box. Depending on how many people are in this session, it might be easier to use the Q&A box, and people can upvote your questions. So I'll definitely check there first for questions at the end once we get to the Q&A section, but I'll also keep an eye on the chat. So if you have anything you want to add, you can put it into the Q&A box or into the chat, and we'll save plenty of time at the end for questions. So again, thank you to everyone for joining us. I'm Lindsay, head of community and events at Outsite. As I mentioned, Outsite offers co-living spaces, co-working spaces, community events, perks for remote workers, digital nomads, entrepreneurs, creatives, and anyone interested in the lifestyle. So without further ado, let's get into it. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Jessica. I'd love for you to introduce yourself, and then we can go ahead and get started.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here with all of you today. I joined Outsite a couple of years ago, and I've gotten to stay at some amazing places like in Costa Rica and Austin. My home base is in Boston, and I'm actually in Asheville, North Carolina right now today. So I started learning about human design probably about 6 years ago now. And it was so transformative in my own journey that I just kept learning more and then started sharing it with other people. And so some of my experience with human design now in the last 6 years is I work individually with clients and help them learn more about their design. And I also do speaking events and work with corporate clients or small teams to help them learn more about human design and how their team can function best. So let's get into today. And one of my favorite parts about human design is how each person has their own decision-making style. So that's what we're going to learn a little bit more about today. So I just love these memes because everyone has sort of maybe like a different history or reaction when they're learning about something new. So maybe you could just take a moment and kind of think like, how are you feeling? Maybe you're feeling super excited or a little bit like, what is this human design stuff anyway? And so today I really want to help you explore how you operate best because human design really gives you this roadmap of how you can sort of interact with the world and be the best version of yourself. And I think that growing up, we're taught that there's certain ways that successful people operate. And I really feel like what human design does is it gives you this permission slip to just be who you are and understand that maybe some things that really work for you might be different than the norm, and to just be able to embrace that. And I really love when I do talks to have a very conversational style. So as Lindsay was saying, please put questions in the chat so that I can really help you and answer questions that you're really interested in. So I thought I would share a little bit more about my story. And I know some of you, it sounds like already have a little bit of experience with human design and you were sharing your types. And I am a generator. And one of the things that was most impactful for me was learning that my style of making decisions was to really listen to my gut in the moment. And once I learned that, it was this real journey of understanding that I didn't need to make decisions from my mind, but that I could listen more to what I was feeling inside my body. And that would really guide me to listening to those yeses and nos. And one of the other biggest pieces that I learned for me as a generator, which I think can also be true for a lot of types also, is that we don't really need to strategize the how. It's more about focusing on the what. So a little story is a couple of years ago, I really wanted to reach more people with human design. And so I was like, I know that I really want to connect to more people. I don't really know how to do that. And so I was kind of thinking about it a little bit. But then the very next client I had worked for this organization where they offer like rewards to employees. And so then she thought human design would be such a great offering that she got me connected with her company. And then I became one of their offerings. So it can be as simple as getting more clear about what it is that you want and not worrying so much about how it's going to happen. It's kind of like the how can happen when you get out of your own way a bit. So let's get into it. If you don't know your human design yet, something that would be helpful today while I'm talking about the ways that you make decisions is to go to this link, Human Design Blueprint, so that you can look up your human design now. And Lindsay has put those links in the chat. And I guess I'm curious how many people on the call, if you want to share, are you brand new to human design and you don't even know what your type is yet? You can maybe put in the chat if that's you. Because it sounds like a lot of people here already know their type. Okay, so okay, awesome. So there's also some people who are completely brand new. Awesome. So you can go to this link and I'll keep talking a little bit, but you can look up your design. And then Lindsay also put in the chat a link to this document I created. Because something for me is I know that when I'm learning something new and go to sessions, I'm always like, how do I internalize and integrate the information? So I created this PDF that I think is very user-friendly, and it has like little drop-down menus. So you can like select your type. And if you like to take notes, kind of like take some notes in the document as we're going through it. And then when you leave the session today, you'll kind of have your own notes and cheat sheet for the way that you make decisions and your design type. Okay, so every system, or I feel like a lot of things in the world, have their own lingo. So this is a little bit of the human design lingo that I'm going to translate for you. So when you see type and strategy, when you look up your design, what it means is how to feel your best and take aligned action. What's described as your authority in human design is the way you make decisions. So it's really just your decision-making style. And then I was a little bit ambitious today. I'm not sure if we will get to talking about centers in human design. The centers are a really fun part of human design to learn about. And I really like to translate what's called open centers in human design as strengths and hooks. And knowing these can also be a support in helping you make decisions. And so we'll see if we have time to go down that rabbit hole today. And I'm just checking in. It seems like I'm just looking at the chat. So I'm guessing from what I'm seeing in the chat that people who are brand new have been able to look up their chart and get their information. So we are going to start with talking about the different types. And I'm going to take a minute because I'm curious, because I also want to design our chat today to speak to the audience of who's here. So I know we have generators, we have projectors. If you are a manifester, can you tell me in the chat if you're a manifester? Do we have any manifestors here? Okay, awesome. Do we have any, I know we have manifesting generators. Do we have any reflectors? Reflectors are the most rare. So it would be cool if we have a reflector or two here, but I also wouldn't be shocked if we didn't. Are there any manifestors out there? I mean, sorry, not manifestors, any reflectors. All right, cool. So maybe no reflectors today. So let's start with generators. As I was saying at the beginning, I am a generator. And so when you're a generator, you feel your best when you are tapped into your capacity to create and excited by what you're doing. So there's really this like sense of joy. And an example is that the other day I went to a workout class, and it was this really great class. And afterwards, I felt tired, but it was this like exhilarated tired of that I felt really satisfied. It wasn't this tired of like, oh my gosh, I'm so drained and I can't believe I just did that. So that's something that's really important to pay attention to for generators and manifesting generators. What's the feeling you're experiencing? Is it like a satisfied kind of tired, or is it like a drained kind of tired? And as a generator, you also really enjoy kind of getting better at things over time. It's kind of like this slow and steady process. And the thing is, you don't always know where, like when I started learning about human design, I didn't know where that excitement was leading me. It wasn't like I had this intention to start offering sessions to people. It was something that just kind of happened out of my love for learning about it. So part of your journey is really being able to kind of like trust the breadcrumbs of your joy without knowing where it's going to be leading. And each energy type has this feeling that when you're feeling your best really comes through. And for generators, that's satisfaction. And I'm a big fan of always thinking about how we're telling ourselves stories and how we're taking agency over our lives. So instead of just feeling like, oh, when am I experiencing satisfaction? I think the question is also, how do you cultivate that energy of joy or satisfaction in your life? Oops, we just skipped ahead. Sorry about that. Okay. So For generators, each energy type also has what we call this way that you like move through the world. And for generators and manifesting generators, it's responding. So this is where if somebody says to you, do you want to go on a hike today? You get this immediate feeling of like, oh, yes, I want to do that. Or no, I don't want to go on a hike. So this responding is really paying attention kind of towards paying attention to what's coming towards you and then being able to say yes or no to it. Oh, and so the other part of this is if your sort of job in life is to respond, part of what helps you be able to do that is being open to life. So let's say you're somebody who maybe you notice you're a little bit more closed off lately. It's almost like harder for new opportunities or new clients to reach you because you're not as like open and receptive for things to come your way. So receptivity is also something you can play with. And one of the other reasons that this is because generators and manifesting generators, you often can get really caught up in the doing because you have a huge capacity to do. And so sometimes it might feel almost like a little bit uncomfortable to trust that you don't always have to work harder for something to happen, but that you can actually, like I was saying before, get really clear on the what. So that it can like happen for you and that you can receive that thing you're wanting. Okay. And so here's just a little bit more of what alignment might, ooh, having some trouble with the slides. Here we go. Okay, so here's some questions to ask yourself. And I'm just kind of checking the chat here. Oh, yes, relating to being in your body more, absolutely. So some questions are, am I forcing and trying to make things happen? Am I open to receiving, as I was just saying? And if you're a generator or manifesting generator, I think this can be one of the most transformative things is like actually even asking yourself, do you know what a yes feels like in your body or what a no feels like? If you're unclear about those things, that's kind of the first thing to experiment with because this is also closely related to how you make decisions. And sometimes this is where even things like people pleasing can get in the way because if you have a, let's say, a tendency to maybe think about what other people are wanting from you or what will make other people happy, you're sort of like covering up your own response, maybe your own yes or no GPS. So that is also something else you could play with if you know you have a tendency to people please. And the reason and this is also connected to, this is why I said, is it a response or a reflex? Because maybe you're somebody that says yes a lot because you have a habit of saying yes before you stop and check in if you even want to do that thing. And so I say to generators and manifesting generators a lot, are you shoulding yourself? Because since I'm a generator too, we can get really stuck in what we think we should do. And again, that can cover up our true sort of desire of wanting to say yes or no to something. And the other thing that's important for each energy type, I was saying before, there's a feeling that shows up when things are in alignment. There's also this feeling that shows up when things are getting a little bit wonky. And so for generators, that's frustration. And so that's another really important question to ask yourself is where does frustration show up or when does it show up? And are you like okay with experiencing that frustration and letting that be something that guides you as opposed to like getting mad that you're frustrated? And Lindsay, I'm just checking in. Should we hold the questions totally till the end, or do we want to do a little bit of questions as we do each type?
I think we could probably do some questions now as long as you think that we have time.
Sure. Well, do any generators have anything that's popping up? Any questions they want to ask before we keep going?
We'll just give them a second to type. They might not be
Yes.
ready. But if, of course, if you don't get your question in right now, you can either put it in the chat or the Q&A box and we'll get to it at the end, so don't worry. But before we move on, does anyone have any questions about what Jessica has said?
Awesome. Then we can keep going. Okay. So let's talk about now manifesting generators. And so manifesting generators and generators are very closely related, but there are a few differences that I will tell you about. And for manifesting generators, it's the same, similar to generators. Do you feel your best when you're really excited by what you're doing? And something that's a little bit different than generators is you tend to have this non-linear way of being. So you tend to like jump around, like you sort of can go 100 miles an hour and then jump totally to something else. And it might seem like, what? That doesn't make sense, or you just skipped a step. But that's part of your efficiency, is you really enjoy being like, that's not so important. This is really what we need to focus on. So that's a different energy that you bring. And so really leaning into your diverse interests, like I'd be curious if some people in the group are entrepreneurs or maybe you have really diverse interests. But it's really about embracing that and not judging yourself. Like if you really love photography, but you also run a tech company and are really into learning about body work, like it's totally cool to have all these different interests and you don't always know how they're connected or where they are leading. And it's the same feeling of satisfaction that I mentioned for generators. And then as a manifesting generator, again, it's about responding and being receptive. And and again, as I said with generators, really noticing that you're feeling what you're feeling in your body and you're not feeling like you just have to make decisions from your mind. And one of the things I like to say is your mind is this really beautiful and powerful place that you might use in your work to solve problems, or you might use to fix a car or help guide a friend who's struggling with something. But it's like not, you don't want to use your mind on yourself for yourself and your own journey in life. It's really listening to those cues in your body to guide you. And that goes for all the types. And then some questions to ask yourself as a manifesting generator. One of my favorites is, am I busy doing things I don't want to do just because I can do it faster? And so this is something I see a lot with my manifesting generator clients is that they might, for example, live with a partner and they will get up and do like all the chores and wash all the dishes and clean the whole house because they're like, well, I can just get it done faster. Or even in the workplace, they might have colleagues that were going to do something, but then the manifesting generator just ends up doing all those jobs because they're like, well, I can just do it better and faster. And so it's just really something to notice. Like, can you trust that other people might not be as fast as you, but can you trust their word that they will do their part? And can you be okay if maybe their process is a little bit slower? Um, and again, really just like embracing your tendency to skip steps. And also something that can sometimes come up for manifesting generators because you can learn something really quickly and then almost feel done with it. Like maybe you were a kid and you were learning how to play soccer and you played for a season and then you didn't want to play again next season. You might have a little bit of a story that you're a quitter. And so part of this is, can you rewrite that story that you're not actually a quitter? You just learn things really fast and then you want to switch to something else. And I'm just, as we switch to manifestors, I'm just checking the chat. Oh, I thought manifesting generator, I thought I just was a dreamer. Oh, yes, I can never define my work because it's so multifaceted. Oh, and I do see that there's a question here. So this human design is based on your birth date, but it's a little bit like if anyone's familiar with kind of like Myers-Briggs or the Enneagram, it's kind of like this, a little bit of this personality system that gives you this roadmap of understanding more about who you are. And again, I think I said this at the beginning, but these archetypes that we're talking about are meant to feel expansive and not limiting. So please feel free to take what resonates and leave the rest. So manifestors, you are really here to initiate and create change. And this energy type is actually a little bit more rare than generators and manifesting generators. So sometimes there might be this feeling of maybe feeling a little bit different or unique and feeling like maybe sometimes people don't understand you. And something that you're really here to do is you have these urges sometimes where you might really want to work on something or you feel really called to learn about something. And it could even be as simple as all of a sudden you have this urge where you want to learn about yoga or go to a yoga class. And so for you, it's really important to follow your urges. And whereas manifesting generators and generators, there's this responding that needs to happen, like something sort of comes in from the outside. Somebody asks you a question and you say yes to it. Manifestors, you don't really need anything from the outside. This is what's different about you and other types, is you're the one that sort of starts a process of something. So if you've ever imagined kind of like this row of dominoes, you're the one that like starts the row of dominoes falling. So this is really where that initiating comes in. And so sometimes there can be maybe a little bit of a story of maybe making your power a little bit smaller or sort of watering down your specific flavor. And it's really important to embrace like the fullness of who you are, because you're really meant to draw people towards you who can sort of like support your mission. Like, let's say you're running a startup. You might have this like very specific vision, but you're not necessarily someone who wants to be in the weeds, like sort of doing all the work. So that's really important for you to really embrace the fullness of who you are. And for manifestors, where we were talking about the other types with satisfaction, for manifestors, it's peace. So you feel really good when you're like cultivating this energy of peace in your life. So that's something you can reflect on too, is like, how do you cultivate a feeling of peacefulness? And where generators were responding, manifestors are informing. And so what this really means is that you are letting people know something that's going to happen that can impact them. So I, even just in a really simple terms, I might be with a friend who's a manifestor and they might say, hey, I'm going to go for a swim in the ocean now. And I'm like, okay, see ya. And they're just kind of like letting me know what they're about to do. And I had a manifestor client once who was a doctor and she wanted to go do, I think, like a residency or something in another country. And she had like filled out the paperwork. She got into this program. She had this whole plan. But what she didn't do was like tell her other colleagues about this plan. So then when she told them about it last minute, they were like giving her a hard time about like not wanting to cover her shifts and sort of creating all this chaos basically. And so the piece we were talking about just a minute ago, when you inform people of like your plan, like, hey, I applied to this program, I want to go to this other country to work at this other hospital, then people are kind of like, oh, okay. And they kind of like know what's about to happen. So that's why the informing is really important. And another small example is I've had a lot of manifestor clients tell me that like if they're going to go work on a project or something, they really don't like to be interrupted. So it helps them create that peace to like say to their partner, like, oh, I'm going into the office, like in our house, and I'm going to be working for the next 2 hours. Like, so please don't interrupt me during those 2 hours. And again, that creates this sort of like piece of you communicated what you're about to do. And so then somebody knows. Okay, I'm just checking the chat here. And someone asked, does being a manifesting generator mean that parts of being a manifestor and generator will also resonate with you? And yes, if you are feeling that, then that can be true for you. There are a lot of manifesting generators. I know today I'm trying to keep it like simple because I know we don't have a lot of time. But yes, some people who are manifesting generators do talk about feeling like parts of them resonate with like like they have this initial response and then they like inform somebody of the plan. So there can be parts that resonate, both parts that resonate with you as a manifesting generator, but ultimately you're still like a generator first. Or I shouldn't say like a generator first, but those that responding is sort of like the first filter. Okay. And so something that's really important to ask yourself as a manifester is, again, I was saying before how each type has this feeling. And so we were talking about peace. And so kind of the other piece of that for you is anger. And so what is your relationship with anger and where and when does it show up? And I think anger is a really interesting one, um, because a lot of my manifestor, well, I wouldn't say a lot, but I would say some of them really have had a journey with being comfortable with actually expressing their anger and feeling that it's like healthy and safe and okay to express anger and that they don't need to hold it in. So that could be something interesting to explore if you're a manifester. Okay. So we'll talk about our next energy type for today, which I think will be our last energy type because I don't think we have any reflectors here. So we'll talk about projectors. And yeah, so excited for projectors. So important. Okay. So projectors, you are really here. You can see the big picture in a way that other people can't see it. And part of your gift is in being able to have this insightfulness to guide others to be able to like tweak and refine systems. And so, for example, maybe some of you, if you know a little bit about human design, for example, Jenna Zoe, maybe you've heard of her. She has really helped revolutionize the human design space, and she's a projector. So she created like a human design app, and she has found all these ways to like share her insights about human design in a way that doesn't just involve, for example, working one-on-one with clients. So she's getting out her wisdom to way more people with like the same amount of energy in a way on something like an app. So that's an example of a projector being able to really like flex their insights. And the signature feeling for a projector is success. So the question for you is like, how do you cultivate the energy of like feeling successful in your life? And a really important question, because for every projector, this will be unique. Like, what does success look and feel like for you? That's a really vital question, that it's really fun for you as a projector to play with. And that's something that could also change and evolve over time. And the way that a projector moves through the world is being invited. So it's really important for you to get clear on who and what you have to offer, because this helps make you visible and this helps people invite you in. So if you have a little bit of knowledge of human design, maybe you felt as a projector before like, oh, like I just have to like wait to be invited. But I really like to reframe it as you have so much agency in this, because if you think about it like a lighthouse, when a lighthouse has their light on, people know where to go. They can find it. It's like this beacon. So as a projector, your power really lies on like turning your light on and being a beacon and being clear about what you want to draw people in for. And so some questions to ask yourself as a projector. One of the biggest ones can be really noticing if you're giving people unsolicited advice. This can be like a huge energy drain for you as a projector, because if you're giving people advice or insight who aren't really asking for it, you might end up feeling really bitter and annoyed that the person isn't like listening to your insight. So instead, it's more like kind of you're like doing your thing. And then there's that moment, maybe you have colleagues who are suddenly like well, can you tell me, Lindsay, like, what do you think about this? Or how do you think I could do that differently? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, let me tell you, I've been just waiting for you to ask. Um, and so the feeling for projectors is bitterness. Like you can feel really bitter if you don't feel seen and recognized for your gifts. So something for you to really reflect on is like, where and when does that bitterness show up? And again, what's your role in that? Like, how can you um take some agency or really like communicate with someone? Or are you participating in like a dynamic at work or in your personal life where you continue to feel like someone isn't valuing you, um, but you sort of like in a way keep allowing that to happen? Okay. And so next we're going to get into the different decision making styles. I don't think we have any reflectors here. Okay. One of my favorite things I like to say is we say yes to an experience, not an outcome. Because I've had clients before who say, but I listened and I like felt the yes in my body and then I like did the thing, but it didn't go the way I wanted. And so just a reminder that we don't always know like what experience we're meant to have, but just because you feel like an experience is really aligned doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to have the outcome you want. So it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. So the first style we have is what I like to call in the moment, trusting your gut. And if you have this decision-making style, you are a generator or a manifesting generator. Um, you could, so as a generator or manifesting generator, you either have this style, trusting your gut, or you have something else called wait for clarity that we'll get to in a minute. So this trusting your gut goes back to that gut feeling that I was mentioning before, like knowing when something is a yes or a no. And it's really helpful for you, I found in my experience as a generator, to also teach people how to ask you questions. So instead of people saying, what do you want to do today? Teach them to say, well, can you give me some choices? Like, what are the choices? And then they're like, okay, well, we could go for a hike, we could go shopping, or we could go to the beach. Because then there's something for you to respond to, and you're like, ooh, I want to go to the beach. So even too, if you have, maybe you're in a partnership and you're both generators or manifesting generators, bounce questions off of each other instead of asking open-ended questions. And this is true for everyone. But when I'm talking about noticing the visceral reactions in your body, it's hard to feel like a yes or a no, or feel some of the other parts of the other decision-making styles if you're not really present in your body. So that's one thing you can also start to notice is like how much of you is really there to help you make that decision. So the next style we have is waiting for clarity. And you get clarity over time. So it's really important, unlike what we just talked about, like saying yes or no in the moment. For you, you might feel that initial yes or no, but then you're going to need a moment or a couple days to kind of feel into your wave, um, and really understand, or I shouldn't say understand, but really kind of feel like, what do I actually want to do? Like, do I want to go to dinner with that friend, or do I want to go on vacation with that person? And as like a little funny story, I've had a lot of people who are wait for clarity tell me that like this even is true for online shopping. Like if they put a bunch of stuff in their cart and they buy it, it arrives and they're like, wait, why did I just order? Like, why did I even order that? Like, I don't even like that. So it's even sometimes just like giving yourself a night and checking in the next day. And when you're kind of feel ready to make a decision, even if it's something like taking a new job or moving, you'll feel like a little more clear and neutral, and it won't feel so charged. So another style we have is in the moment instinct. Is there anyone out there that has this on your blueprint? This is what would say splenic authority. Just looking at the chat here. Okay, so cool. There are people that have splenic authority. Awesome. And this is a big one. This is what I like to say is kind of the most animalistic way of making decisions. It's very just like connected to like smell, taste, sound. So it's not necessarily going to make sense in your mind because it's this feeling that you have. And you get very quick clarity in the moment. So let's say you could wake up one morning and have a plan, and then all of a sudden you're like, you know what? I really don't want to go to that place for brunch. I actually want to go here. And so part of your journey is learning to trust your instincts and like to let yourself be spontaneous. And I find that clients I have with splenic authority, I feel like they're either usually comfortable being spontaneous or they're like, what are you talking about? I'm never spontaneous. So you could kind of see where you fall on the spectrum and like how could you cultivate a little more spontaneity in your life. And when you have splenic authority, it can also be really important to, you can be a little more sensitive to what other people are wanting from you or wanting you to say. So it can be important to kind of take space so you can actually get in touch with your own kind of instincts. Do we have anybody that has tuned into your willpower and wants? If you have this style, you could be a projector or a manifester. Let's see. Anyone have this one? If no one in the audience has tuned into your willpower and wants, I'll skip it. Okay, I'll keep going. Some of the ones we're getting, oh, tune into your intuition. So tune into your intuition would be the one that I just talked about, which is like splenic authority, or here I've called it in the moment instinct. So it looks like, no, don't be sorry for asking the question. It can be confusing, so don't apologize. Okay, I'm gonna keep going because it doesn't seem like anybody has this one. Does anybody have talk it out? This is a little more rare. Would be a certain type of projector that has talk it out. Yay, okay. So talk it out. So if you have wait for clarity, we talked about that one just a little bit ago. So talk it out is you really get clarity as you listen to yourself and talk and process out loud. So can you let yourself just start talking without having a plan? And your truth is in your tone. So it's really important to listen to like not just what you're saying, but how you sound. And one of the really important things, like the most important thing for you, is to have people in your life who will listen to you without offering advice or feedback, who will just be able to reflect what you're saying back to you. So what I mean by this is one of my really good friends has this. And so when I'm listening to her talk about something, I might say, "Oh, you sound really excited about this new job you're talking about." Or I might say, you're like, when you're talking about that, you're sounding kind of like low or confused." So I'm just reflecting back what I kind of the tone I'm hearing her use or the feeling that's coming across. I'm not like, well, oh yeah, you should definitely take that new job because I think blah, blah, blah. So you really want to notice if there's people in your life that you feel comfortable going to who will just listen without giving advice. And another cool trick is you can actually record yourself talking and like listen back to hear your truth. This one is even more rare. Um, this is sometimes it's called mental authority. I like to call it clear knowing. Does anybody out there have clear knowing? It's much more rare. So I think I'll skip this one for now. If you have it, let me know though, and I'm happy to talk about it. And because we don't have any reflectors, this way of making decisions is really unique to reflectors. So I think what I'll do now is I think this is a good place to stop and to take a look at our Q&A and for people to ask questions.
Well, thanks so much, Jessica. That was really helpful. I definitely have a lot more clarity around my type, and also I've been listening for some of my friends too who have different human design types from me, so I can share with them. So thank you again. So let's check the Q&A box first, and I do think there are also some questions
Mm-hmm.
um, in the chat, which we'll try to get to as well. Just for a reminder for everyone, you can use the Q&A box. Other people can upvote your questions, or I'll look back through the chat once we've done the Q&A box. So take a minute, check out the questions on the screen, and let us know if there's anything that you would like Jessica to answer. So the first question that we have in the Q&A box is, can you share a little more of your experience with the waiting to respond as a generator? Do we have to learn to stop initiating anything at all with others' projects, ideas, etc.?
Yes, and I should have asked you this earlier. I'm not sure what style Zoom this is, but can people come on or not really? It's just more of a
I actually haven't tried that.
okay, well then we'll just stick with it the way it is, no problem.
Okay, sorry about
And
that.
no, that's okay. And Natalie, if you have any like clarifying pieces as I'm talking, you can just put it in the chat. Um, so so I think the word waiting can really trip people up. I'm a little bit of a wordsmither. So that's why in like you might see some traditional HD, they say like waiting to respond, but I really just like to say responding. And how I like to describe it, I wouldn't think about it so much as like, oh, I need to like stop initiating. I think in a way it's like you're taking your focus from always thinking about having to be in the doing to being more in the being. And so, as I was sharing, maybe you heard that example earlier when I was talking about how I was like, wow, I really want sort of like funnels to reach more clients. Like how can I do that? And then there was a part of me that was like, well, I should probably go on social media, or maybe I should like reach out to all these people. But instead, it was like the very next day, a client showed up with a connection to a company that like worked out really well. So in that example, I didn't have to go out and work harder or like initiate all these interactions. I just sort of allowed that conversation to happen with that client when she offered. Does that help answer your question, Natalie? So I wouldn't say, again, it's like thinking about it in that way of stopping initiating. It's just like really focusing on the being.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's really helpful. And Natalie, if you have any clarifying questions, feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A box. We have another question here. How do you know that a decision is truly coming from the gut and not from fear or past trauma? And this is coming from somebody who is a generator.
Can you read it one more time?
Yes, of course. How do we know that a decision is truly coming from the gut and not from fear or past trauma?
Mm-hmm. Um, that is a really beautiful question, and it's so layered and so nuanced. And one piece of it that I'll go back to is when I was saying earlier, asking yourself, is this a response or a reflex? Because there might be some patterning you have of the way that you do things, or maybe like saying yes to certain things that was really important for you to do when you were younger for whatever reason, or to keep yourself safe. And so now there might be this element of wanting to shift that. And so maybe let's go back to the yes. Maybe you had this pattern of saying yes to something and you don't want to say yes to it anymore. And you're like, how do I really know if it's coming from like a true place or not? It's really like noticing when you say that yes, do you feel excited? Do you feel lighter? Do you feel engaged? Or do you say yes and then maybe experience like a contraction or like tightness? And so I'll just even share in my experience when I was younger with like dating, I would sometimes like go out with someone or have an experience, and I thought that I thought that something was like a yes, but then the next day I would be like, oh, why do my muscles like feel so tight, or like what's going on? And then I would be like, oh, actually I like wanted to say no, but I like, didn't want to disappoint this other person. So it can be, I think, just kind of tuning into those body sensations and your own intuition around it. And also, of course, getting support if it's something that you need to do for yourself.
Thank you. We have another question here from Jan. I remember situations where I felt a clear no, but in hindsight, saying yes was very good for me. How does that fit into the idea of feeling intuitively whether to say yes or no? That's a tricky one.
Hmm. I think this kind of goes into, actually, it can be so fun to get into looking at the centers, because sometimes this can provide like a little more insight into why maybe some like different feelings are coming up. Because there's some people who are actually like designed to be a little more spontaneous, and some people it feels good to pause more. So I think there can be different factors in this, but of course, like, there are just certain maybe paths we go on in life or things we say yes to, and then we're like, oh, that was really important. And so another thing you can consider too is sometimes maybe, like, I think the person who just asked this question too about trauma, like, is the no coming from a place of fear, or is it a true no? So that's something you can just like consider for yourself. And yeah, and someone's saying, can we do a session on centers? I will leave that up to Lindsay, but yeah, that could be like fun to explore, because sometimes that can help understand, oh, that no was coming from, like, I did really want to go skydiving, but I was like really scared.
Yes, so if you're interested in doing another session on human design centers, either upvote that in the Q&A, let me know in the chat, or you can send me an email after that you would, if that's something that you would be interested in. I think it might be a really interesting topic as well to dive a little bit deeper into this. I do have a question. And
Yes.
one of mine, I'm the talk it out is my
Mm-hmm.
strategy. And I think I need to be better at helping the people around me understand that I sometimes don't need the answers. I just need to, as you say, talk it out. Do you have any tips or tricks for sharing with your friends and partners about human design and about your type and strategy to help them understand maybe how to best
Mm-hmm.
interact with you?
Sure. So the first thing I would say is, even with what you're describing, you can be as descriptive or not. So like a lot of projector clients I have who are talk it out will say to me, oh, I always knew I processed things out loud. So it's like you could even just take the most basic approach of saying to somebody, like, I've been noticing recently that for me, I really need to process things out loud. So I'm gonna talk something out right now, and I'd really love it if you can just listen without offering any advice, because this really just helps me figure out what I want to do. So it's kind of like you're setting that, sometimes I hate the word container, but setting that container and creating that thing that then the person's like, oh, okay, you just want me to listen. Um, and then if you do want to talk about human design, you could take it to that level, into that place. And there was just one other thing I was gonna say. Oh, and I think a way also maybe opposite this, you can work on it, is noticing when other people are talking things out, what do you do? Do you listen to them, or do you jump in and offer advice? Because it's really interesting what we want other people to do for us, to notice what do we do for other people. So sometimes, I don't know if other people have had this experience, but when you start working on something for yourself and you're like, oh, I really want to ask somebody, are you asking my opinion, or do you just want me to listen? That then it almost like shifts your relationships with other people too.
That's great. Thank you so much. I also really like the idea of recording myself
Mm.
speaking. That's a great tip. So thank you. Thank you for answering that question. We have about 5 more minutes, and I do see another question in the Q&A.
Yes.
This person is a projector with splenic authority, and they find that sometimes their natural spontaneity means they change their position or profession frequently, which makes it harder for people to find their lighthouse. Any
Hmm.
reflections or thoughts on that and how to integrate these elements?
I guess my question for you, Eleanor, I wonder, like sometimes maybe we like different flavors of water, but we still like water. So I guess I'm wondering, is it like the labels that are changing? And have you ever done any work around contemplating your values or what you really want to be seen for or what success looks like for you? Because then if you have those sort of core things as your drivers, I wonder if it would lift maybe a little bit of maybe the weight you're feeling of feeling like it's like making it harder for people to find you because maybe it's just the label that's changing, but what's the core of it that's still the same about like your interests or like who you are or what you view as success.
Awesome. Thank you. And in the chat, she says, thank you. That makes sense. They've done some
Okay.
values work, but not as much on the success side. So
Okay.
maybe that worksheet that is in the chat would be helpful to go over and do some reflecting on. Thank you for sharing that with us.
And I see Avery asked a question that would be a great ending question. And before I do that one, I saw Natalie say something in the chat that she emailed a bunch of new clients recently and it didn't feel good. She said, I think I struggle with trusting that just being more is okay. And Natalie, I just wanted to say that in my experience as a generator, what's really interesting too is sometimes the more it's like if I focus on something in one area of my life, like I don't know, let's say I've been really wanting to trust myself when I say I'm going to go to the gym that I do it, or when I say I'm going to get up when my alarm goes off and I do it. Sometimes when I focus on those really little things, all of the sudden, like some opportunity I've been wanting will kind of like come through that's in a way feels completely unrelated. So that's something else you could play with is your relationship with like trusting yourself and if anyone's read the Four Agreements, like being impeccable with your word, that can be a fun way to play with that. And in terms of the books, Avery, or recommendations, I think it depends on like kind of how you like to learn. So I was mentioning like Jenna Zoe has an app. She also has a podcast. There's actually tons of human design podcasts. I don't know if yeah, so if you like podcasts, you can go that route. Um, there's also books. If so, like I was saying, Jenna Zoe has a book. I'm trying to think if there's I actually think like some of the podcasts are more interesting and helpful than just going into the book, but it's totally a personal preference. And it looks like, do we have time for this last question, Lindsay?
If you have time, then I think we can take a few more minutes.
Um, how can we use human design to inform our career decisions? Should I shift my career, stay? Oh, Janet, I feel like this is actually a great segue because this feels like this would be a question that I wouldn't just want to answer one-sided. Like I'd want to have a conversation with you. And so this is something that would be like a great question to bring to a session that we could talk about and kind of like help you process like what it is that you want.
Where can people find you if they did want to work with you further, Jess?
Yes. So on the bottom of this slide is my Instagram handle. So you can send me like a DM. I'm a big fan of like voice noting. So if you want to send a voice note on Instagram, or you can also email me. My email is down there too if you wanted to set up a session.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I will include Jess's contact information in the post-event materials if you want to reach out and talk with Jess more. That will be coming in the next few days, as well as a recording of this session. So we are out of time, and it did look like there was some interest in diving deeper into this topic. So I'm really happy to hear that this is a topic that is interesting to our community, and we'll definitely think about having Jess back to dive maybe deeper into the centers for part two. So thank you everyone for joining us today. I always feel really grateful that people, take time out of their day to spend in community with one another and diving into topics that are really interesting like this. So thank you again for coming. One last time, I'm Lindsay. I'm head of community and events at Outsite. Outsite offers co-living, co-working, community events, perks for digital nomads, remote workers, entrepreneurs, creatives, people who are interested in that lifestyle as well. You can reach me either on the Outsite Member Hub or by replying to any of the event emails that get sent to you. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about Outsite, working while traveling, remote work, that type of thing. And again, I will include all of Jess's contact information in our post-event materials so that you can contact Jess if you would like to speak with her more. Thank you again to everyone who joined us, and big thank you to Jess as well.
Thanks for coming, everyone. It was fun.
Great. Awesome. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day or evening, wherever you are in the world, and I hope we talk again soon. Bye now.